Hello, Isabel. Can you hear me? Yes. Make her bigger.
Yeah. Did you want to start with her bigger?
Yeah, like I don't, yes, I can't, my eyesight is bad at the best of times.
Sorry, I was muted, so yes, I can hear
Well,
you.
now we can see you in all your glory. So that's helps my eyes. Thank you.
Oh no, don't tell me it's the whole screen. That's really not good.
No, only half,
Half the screen, okay.
as big as ours. All right, we'll start in a minute.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself just in case. I think.
Good evening, members of council and staff and members of the public. We actually have two meetings that are starting at 6:30 tonight. So, but we will do this one first, this one being the public hearing for PID 5527-4591 Gasborough Avenue. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here in Kispootwick, one of the 7 districts of Mi'kma'ki, homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the treaties of peace and friendship, and we thank the Mi'kmaq people for their generosity in sharing their homeland with us. We are all treaty people. Just before I turn this over to staff, I did mention to a few people in the audience before we started. We've had a few new people come. When we finish this public hearing, and actually I have to give some instructions. So Devin, you're not quite on yet. When we finish this, we will be going into council and there will be a public input process. I expect many of you are here with an interest in the East End secondary plan, and that's great. We will not, council will be taking public input, but we cannot accept any public input related to the East End secondary plan. So I just wanted to let people know if your only reason for being here was for that, please do stay, but I just wanted to make that comment. So now the public hearing for Gasborough, just council has received this. We did a public hearing just a few weeks ago, but for the benefit of people who may be watching in the audience and a reminder to us, the panel and the second vote on that item will not be tonight, but the panel will include members of council, and I will just introduce them. Starting on my left, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Palmadeer, Councillor Ingham, Deputy Mayor Madeira Voss is joining us on the camera up there, Councillor Butler, Councillor McKay, and myself, Mayor Donovan. The role of council is to listen to the public this evening. We will not debate or challenge any comments by any of the speakers for this public hearing. However, we may ask questions of clarification. Only council members present and all members of council are indeed present at this public hearing. So when it does come to council for a vote, all members of council will be able to vote. When the presenters this evening related to the Gasborough Avenue public hearing are speaking, I would ask us all to not make any comments, positive or negative, which means no booing, no clapping, no hissing, or whatever other joyful sounds people may want to make. Please no inappropriate language, and no signs, and I don't see anybody came with signs, are to be displayed. And debates between council speakers or staff or the applicant are not permitted. We as council are of course permitted to ask questions of clarification. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to staff to give us an overview of the proposal and the process, and then I will ask a council if they have any questions of clarification. The applicant, and I do see Travis is here, will be able to make a presentation. You may not need to, may not plan to, but council could ask you questions of clarification. There will be public comment. If there's any member of the public who would like to comment on the item in front of us, that being the Gasper Avenue, you may do that after the last speaker. And the applicant, after everybody has spoken and asked questions, the applicant has an opportunity to respond if you so wish to the points raised. And then we will adjourn this meeting and we will come back and reopen I'm not sure what word I was looking for, but we will start with the actual council meeting tonight. Director Lake.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be quite brief in my introduction here. I want to share this. Okay, so just the reason that we're here, we've been considering this application for some time. You can see on the screen the different steps that we go through when we are, if I could zoom in on this. There we go. So we start these processes with a public information meeting. Some files that we do consider go to our design review committee. This one did not. It's not in an architectural control area. I then went on to planning advisory committee. This is coming out of what is circled there, committee of the whole initial consideration. This was moved to this evening for a public hearing. I will say that the timeline has been a little bit disjointed on this file just because we were trying to work out a couple of key issues. So I just wanted to mention those. One was just the timing of the overall finishing of the site. There was, as we moved through this, a change where there was a commercial building contemplated, a mixed-use building along the frontage, which was removed. So the application was sort of much more focused on the two 10-unit buildings. And also the real key here, I think, was some negotiation that had to happen between our engineer and the applicant around building a sidewalk, because there is no sidewalk at that section of Gaspereau. So this was part of the negotiation that we've gone through. Just remind everyone how this site is set to be finished. So building with number 215, 223, 221, 219, and 217 are all existing buildings. So what we're talking about here is these two townhome structures, 10 units each, 2-story. And the package goes into some other detail about certain aspects. But I think that's the basis. Staff have been recommending it. Planning committee also recommended this, and here we are tonight. So council has the benefit of hearing directly from the public. Thank you.
Members of council, does anyone have any question for Director Lake? Councillor Ingham.
Yes, can you tell me how many like 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms that are proposed in those units, or is that known yet?
I might look at Travis. Is it all 2s? Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Then, oh, sorry, Councillor Palmer.
So once these lots or these townhouses are built, is there room for more buildings on that property, or is that property now, will we consider it full?
There's a bit of room where they had a building proposed initially. It was just a lot of uncertainty in terms of moving forward with that and making commitments around that. And so we sort of took that out. The applicant took that out. Yeah, but there could be an opportunity in the future there.
I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, that's what I thought that was the case. Thank you.
Oh, yes, if we could make Isabel larger, I really have trouble seeing her hand. Well, her picture large. Yes.
I
see,
think
now
I'm
I can
actually
actually
large
see the
enough.
hand is right there.
I just thank you, Mayor Donovan. I just wanted to ask, I understand that the landscaping, a large part of the landscaping will be delayed because of the construction that will need to take place in areas where that will be finalized. But do we have a final landscaping plan and sort of beautification plan for that, the entire property?
There is one included in the package, yes. It'll be attached with the development agreement.
Is there any status on the the parts that won't be affected by the construction?
I think when the applicant comes up to speak, that would probably be a good time to just speak with him about some of the other aspects. But the expectation, the development agreement was tied to completing this and having some time after the buildings are finished to finish the site.
Thank you.
Mr. Mills, did you want to make a presentation? Okay, well, we will certainly, there may be some questions for you. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the mic and Devin can organize, lift the table and all those things. That would be helpful, and because think maybe some members of council may have questions for you. So with that, do any members of council have any questions they would like to ask of Mr. Mills? Deputy Mayor, did you want to ask your question of Mr. Mills? Go ahead. You're still muted, Isabel.
Yes, thank you, Travis. I know we've spoken about the landscaping before and the pond and moving around some of the equipment or I think it was the garbage areas and stuff. I'm just want to know if there's been any progress on the areas that won't be affected directly by the construction in terms of the landscaping.
You're asking if I have done any of the landscaping ahead of phase 3? The answer is no.
Okay, so
I don't have any money to do the landscaping until the loans come in for the 3rd phase.
okay. Thank you. I just that was been a theme with this project for the last while, and I just want to keep it make sure we don't lose sight of that aspect of it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, the goal to have the amenity building, that's an important one for me, and it was lost during the 1st phase, so that's another big priority for me.
Okay.
Councillor Palmer.
Thanks for coming up, Travis. What kind of timeline do you think you're looking at here?
Maximum 2 years, preferably faster.
Other questions of the applicant from members of council? Councillor Elliott?
I'm interested to know who wants to live there.
In
Are
the
you getting a
next
lot of
phase or currently?
Yeah, well, both. Are you getting a lot of inquiries?
5 a day. Yeah, and I don't do my own management anymore either, so I'd have to ask them how many they're getting a day. I would say I don't think there's a typical demographic for that area. It's a real mix.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, there's 15 kids probably living up there. A lot of young professionals, and it probably leans toward young professionals, but not entirely. And the newest ones, they're 2 bedrooms. I might see if I can squeeze a few 3 bedrooms in there. Probably would attract more families. There's a strong demand from families right now, very strong.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more time, any questions from Councillor Butler? Are you going to push your button? No, couldn't see that hand. Wasn't sure where it was going. All right, thank you very much, Travis. And this is an opportunity if any members of the public wish to come up and make any comments on this proposal. Yeah, come up, Corey. Just state your name and where you live and your comments.
My name is Corey Bayer. I live at 63 Pleasant Street, which is the property that is right to the east of Travis's property. And I did talk to him privately about this, but my question was, why build these 2 buildings, which are right up next to my property, rather than use the field on the west side of his property? And why not build like another one of the buildings, like the big building that he built? I have a bunch of questions. That's one of them.
I guess this is more comments, but I guess we could make that a comment. Yes, he will. Yes. Corey, if you have other questions, and then just for Travis, if you can,
These
kind
are
of-
like almost like a devious private with Travis,
fair enough.
but
There's
a lot
some,
of fireworks come from that property. Still. And I wish there was just a moratorium on private fireworks. Cause I don't want my house to burn down.
sure.
Right? And also smoking. A lot of smokers in your property. And I don't know how you can stop them from smoking outside. right
I'm
next
not
to
sure
the
those
property.
last two are things we can address in the hearing, but certainly Travis, if you want to respond to Mr. Byers. Initial question.
Initial question was why at the back? Well, my infrastructure is set up for the back and there's space at the back. And I was gonna put something in the front and the back, but due to fears around financing for commercial buildings, I pulled out and just left it the way it was. Starting a new set of plans with a larger building in the front would be expensive and backtracking. The fireworks, I didn't know they were still doing that. I haven't received any complaints for a long time. 2 years ago, it was a problem. And I'm not sure what Wolfville's policy is on fireworks.
We can
so-
certainly pass that on to our
Yeah.
compliance officer. It's not really
Yeah,
a
and the-
hearing issue, but
Smoking cigarettes, yeah, it bothers me too, but I can't stop them. The 15% of Canadians smoke. So probably a disproportionate number up there.
thank you. All right, are there any more members of the public who would like to comment on this item? Are there any more members of the public who would like to comment on this item? And Travis, is there anything else you would like to say? Evan? No? All right, members of council, are there any more questions? All right, could I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing, please? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Butler, second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Public hearing for PID 552-74591 Gasper Avenue is hereby closed. And just give us 1 minute and we will get our other agenda up and we will start with the actual council meeting. Thank you. All right. Welcome to Town Council meeting of June 20th, 2023. And I would ask the Deputy Mayor if she would move the approval of the agenda, please. You're muted.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. I would move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Staff, are there any changes, additions? No? Could I have a seconder, please? Council. Oh, Councillor Ingham. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed. There are 3 sets of minutes. One is an in-camera meeting. So Deputy Mayor, motion for the first set of minutes, please.
I would move that we accept the minutes for the in-camera meeting. This was, I think, the May 25th, sorry,
May 16th.
May 16th in-camera meeting.
No, this is just, you should have the motion list, but it is the May 16th Town Council meeting.
The May 16th Town Council meeting. Sorry, Mayor, I thought you were referring to the in-camera meeting first.
No.
So I would move that the May 16th Town Council meeting minutes be approved.
Are there a seconder? Councillor Elliott, are there any errors or omissions? The only one I noticed is on page 3 of 4, the Councillor McKay's last name is just, there's the letters are mixed up. It's just a typo. Didn't even see that, did you? Yeah. If there's not, It just, you expected it to be right, and but I noticed it was kind of jumbled a bit. Hearing nothing else, all those in favor of approval of those minutes with that edit made, please indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed, that's passed. Now, Deputy Mayor, the in-camera meeting of same evening.
I would move that the in-camera meeting for the May 16th council meeting be approved as minutes be approved.
Yeah, seconder, please. Counselor Butler, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed. That's passed. And finally, Deputy Mayor, the special town council meeting.
I would move that the minutes for the special town council meeting held on May the 25th be approved.
And a seconder, please. Counselor Palmer, are there any changes, errors, omissions to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed? Those are passed. Well, this was a really busy month, and I think we're only halfway through, a little more than halfway through. Just some of the things, and I know a number of members of council attended these with me. Of course, the entire month is Pride Month, and there have been a number of events that some members of council have attended. I was not here for the walk with Wolfville School. I did see the pictures online, and it happens to be the same dates as the International Town and Gown meeting. And so I have, for the second year in a row, had to miss that. But it looked like it was a lovely day. I did attend along with Councillor McKay and CAO Bowden, the International Town and Gown meeting. We will have a report, maybe a joint report, Jody, on that at Committee of the Whole. But once again, it was an excellent conference and many lessons to be learned. There were two last week, I think it was, to the Wolfville Business Development Corporation and the Valley Regional Enterprise Network both held their AGMs. They were really well attended. I think in my time on council, which is now about 12 years, I would say they were the most well attended, and they were superbly organized in both cases. So those were really enjoyable evenings. Last Friday, Councillor McKay and I and the CAO, I just about gave you the position of deputy mayor, but you are still the CAO. I don't know if that's a promotion or what. Had the pleasure of signing the memorandum, the new memorandum of understanding, or renewed memorandum of understanding with Acadia. That was a lovely event hosted by Acadia in the Garden Room, and so that was exciting to have that re-signed. Of course, Saturday was the Wolfville Pooch Party. A second year in the row for that. It was really well attended. It was a little cool, but I think the dogs really liked that. And I know mine was very sleepy that afternoon. She just conked out. Some upcoming things. Of course, this Thursday, the graduation for the Landmark East students. I'm looking forward to attending that. And on Monday night, our downtown will be closed off for the Horton Grad Parade and Parade of Pictures. And Canada Day celebrations in town at the waterfront on July the 1st. There are so many things happening in this town, and this has been a really big month. I wonder if I have missed anything, Council, that you would like to mention that you attended, or Councillor Palmer?
Oh, I'm not sure it's 100% appropriate here, but I'm going to say it anyway. My good friend Kevin West has been recognized as Volunteer of the Year for Kings County. Kevin is well known in town, particularly Devour, McDonald House, Memory Cafe, Deep Roots, etc. And I'm pretty proud of him.
Yes,
Really good.
that's an excellent candidate. Lovely. What else? Well, thank you. That moves us to public input. Each member of the public, if you should wish to come up and address council, has 3 minutes. And if we don't have many who are coming up, I will let it go to 4. The entire public input process is 30 minutes. questions are to be directed to the chair. In most cases, we don't answer questions here in real time. We may refer it to staff. And as I did mention before, if you want to ask a question or make a comment related to the East End secondary plan, we regretfully tell you that you can't. Council in our hearings acts as a quasi judicial body, and just as in a court, if you've I've only watched it on TV, but after the cases rest and the jury goes out, they can't receive any other information. I know this is disappointing for some people, but those are the rules that we live with. So with the exception of anybody who wishes to speak on that item, is there any member of the public who would like to address council on any matter? All right. That takes us to motions, and we have three motions that come from the committee of the whole meeting. As most mayors often say at this point, I remember Mayor Jeff saying this often. If people are watching and wondering why council is not speaking at length to any of these, it's because we have spoken at length during committee of the whole, and while council is certainly welcome to comment and ask questions, we tend not to. So that's why council tends to go faster. So the first one is RFD 017-2023, the municipal fees policy. Councillor Butler, as the chair of the audit committee, I wonder if you would put that motion on the floor, please.
Certainly, thank you. I move that council approve the amended municipal fees policy 140-1015 as attached to RFD 017-2023.
Thank you. And can we have a seconder, please? Second motion. Councillor McKay, are there any questions of staff on that motion? Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. The next one, Councillor Elliott, I'm going to ask you to read. It deals with RFD 029-2023 public art. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thanks. I would move that council approve the installation of an Alex Colville outdoor Wolfville gallery located on the west facing wall of 399 Main Street, and increase the capital budget for this project from the approved 30,000 to a maximum of 35,000 to be funded from the Public Art Capital Reserve Fund.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Palmer, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. This is another funding one, so I will pass this also over to Councillor Butler as chair of audit, RFD 030-2023, the 18 network and funding motion.
Would you like them done separately?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move that council approve an amended 2023-24 AT project spending level of $187,500 with the increased spending $137,500 more than approved budget of $50,000 in year one to be funded by way of the ICIP grant program.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor McKay. Are there any questions of staff or comments by council? Councillor Butler?
No, I'm just waiting to read the next page.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, all those in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That is passed. Councillor Butler.
I move that council direct staff to incorporate the remaining program spending into the 2025, start again. I move that council direct staff to incorporate the remaining program spending into the 2024-25 10-year capital improvement plan as part of the 2024-25 budget process.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is read. That is passed. Now, we have two items of new business, and the first one is RFD 019-2023 Civic Addressing Bylaw, Chapter 110, this second reading. Because this is a little different, does staff have any
No,
comments?
we didn't receive any submissions from the
Submission.
public on
Okay.
this either.
All right, who would like to move that motion? Counselor Ingham?
I would move that council gives second reading to the civic addressing bylaw chapter number 110.
Seconder, please, Counselor Butler. Are there any questions or comments of staff? Of council for staff? All those in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Now, I believe staff on this next item will have a presentation. Am I correct? Why don't we do that first, and then I will ask the deputy mayor to read that motion. And then we will probably have certainly have the opportunity for this.
Mayor Donovan,
Yes,
when the motion comes up, would it be possible to have it on the screen?
it can be, yes.
Thank you.
We'll make sure it's, and I guess Director Lake wants the. Are we good? Okay.
Very good. Thank you again, Mayor and Council. This has been quite a journey we've been on this file. So this is for Isabel, first slide. I do have the motion, and this is the purpose why we're here, as second reading motion, which I won't read, but it was in the package, just so everyone understands. I'm just going to go through a little bit of background. I had committed at the public hearing to going through some of the concerns that were raised at the public hearing, really just reviewing information that we've already provided. This has been ongoing for 2 years. This is the staff and planning committee recommendation that is in the report and in the secondary plan itself. There has been a lot of engagement on this over 2 years. It has shaped the outcomes. We've made a number of quite substantive changes to this as we've gone through the process. And I do just want to make a note about substantive and non-substantive amendments. Obviously typos and different things that people are picking up, appreciate it. But if we are making substantive type changes to anything this evening, we will sort of check back in at committee of the whole and go through this process with an associated public hearing. So just a reminder of that. This is a slide that we used to show as we went through our plan review for 5 years, and I just dug this out of the closet. But this was, I think, helpful for the councils of the day. We had 2 councils that we went through during that process, but it was really just a bit of a decision-making reminder. The first point is around consultation and feedback. I think, and I get this type of thing all the time, we put surveys out, we go out and do events. We're capturing some percentage of the population, but it's not, we're never really going out and asking every single person what they think of things. And I just, it's a good reminder because council gets a lot of pieces of consultation from me summarized in different formats. So, all of that has to come together. The other reports and other things that we have on the books are obviously relevant here as well. This is an amendment to our municipal planning strategy. Certainly myself and other professionals we've brought in, multiple engineers have worked on this file. Rob LeBlanc, who's not here tonight, but he's worked a lot on this file from Fathom Studios. So there's a lot of professional advice in here, best practice, looking around at what other places are doing and trying to give council the benefit of that. The other are really questions of sort of, council's prerogative and different things that you may or may not take into account when you're making decisions. And we had compiled this, and I won't read them all, but there are a number of considerations here just to remind people that certainly from my seat, every individual view that I get, and I've met with a lot of people on this file, I almost always get the counterpoint to what someone's main issue is. And so this has been a long process of compromise, I think, for a lot of things. And so I think we've landed in a great place, but this has been guided by many voices that have inputted into this process. I'm just going to run through a few pieces here. These are how I kind of segmented, I guess, the feedback at the public hearing. If I miss something, obviously we can take questions about it. So just in the big picture, and this isn't news to council, but I did find at the hearing, there's a lot of projects and sort of adjacent and somewhat related, depending on how you want to frame things, that were brought up. And I think there was a lot of concern around these different things. And a lot of this comes up every year in the fall when we begin our budget process. And so this is a bit of a plug for the annual capital budget process and the debates and different things that we have every single year, because there's a lot of different priorities. Just in my time here since 2014, we've done a lot of work on asset management and getting a better idea of what infrastructure sort of should be the priority. And we try to bring that to council. So a lot of things are certainly in that bucket around infrastructure around the town. Other ongoing projects that I'm not sure everyone is aware of, but because these are different projects, some of them have different funding realities, some of them have different budgets. They're not perfectly aligned. In an ideal world, obviously, a lot of this stuff would be wrapped up before this, but there is a number of things that we've brought to council. They're on the screen. I won't read every single one, but the last one I think is of interest. The province is putting a big push on municipalities moving forward with Housing Accelerator Fund application. That's a federal program to increase housing supply. So we're hoping to bring something to council around that, which will certainly help in this realm and is very relevant to both this project and others. It is a boost to capital programs is how it's setting up. So I think that big picture piece is really important, and a lot of the conversation from my perspective was more in this sort of realm at the public hearing. There was a comment about whether this goes far enough. I just obviously I've provided 100 and some page report. I think it does, but I just these are the community priorities that we've laid out in our municipal plan. I think sometimes these higher level outcomes get lost in some of the more transactional things that we're talking about. But I do think a lot of this has been guided by trying to make things more equitable, trying to give opportunity, trying to take action around climate change, and trying to do things that are a bit more fiscally responsible, certainly from an infrastructure perspective around the density. So I just have a couple of sort of sections here. I'm trying to be brief and summarize these, but Alex is here. Alex D'Souza is in the back. He's the Director of Public Works and Engineering for the town. So these are some sort of notes from my perspective, and I think Alex is going to say a few things about this as well. But I just, Alex and I work in the same building, so we're talking every day. So if something comes up, I'm going to Alex and talking to him about it. So there hasn't really been an issue that we haven't, at least at a cursory level, discussed on this file, and really almost anything we're touching base on it. So I think there was a sense that maybe there hasn't been some oversight on the engineering side, and there certainly has been. The detailed engineering doesn't happen at this stage. We're doing a zoning exercise. We're establishing development rights. Certainly on the Kenny lands, we're moving into that. We're reviewing drawings as we speak. There were some agreements that were signed associated with that through council as well. So we're very engaged in doing that. Alex is very much engaged in all of that. So I won't, I know we can answer specific questions, but I just wanted to outline some of the questions that came up around traffic and parking, stormwater management, water and sewer, both at this site and globally in the town, issues around flow rates, underground power, all of these things that we've covered through this process over the last couple of years. these have all, Alex doesn't always sit beside me at the meetings, but he's very much involved in this. So nothing that has come up, nothing that we've reviewed is a major concern or a reason to certainly completely stop the project. There's been, and I believe Alex is going to mention a couple of issues that have come to our attention that we're investigating, and there's work to do, and that's much like any bigger project and big undertaking, like trying to manage the infrastructure in the town. So just some examples at the bottom of this slide, just where we've invested substantially, both from a capacity perspective, looking for grants and ways to pay for these things, but also in the actual project itself in 2 phases of our sewer treatment plant. That was all with this plan growth in mind. This was all planned into that as part of the way we went through that. There's water infrastructure, there's conversations happening at the source water committee that are related to that. There's roads and capital projects, again, as part of our asset management that are discussed annually. So I just, maybe I'll stop for a second. If Alex, you wanted to add anything, or we could just do questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on most of the important stuff here. Why don't we put it to questions and can fill in any blanks after that.
Maybe I'll just finish.
Do that. Before we get into council's questions or comments, I want to get the motion on the floor. So when you have finished, just let me know.
I just have a couple more pieces. It was mentioned that at the meeting that our population is decreasing. I just wanted to correct that for the record. I have that in my notes that someone had said that. These are some slides from a provincial presentation I've been at recently, and I've been involved in a couple of provincial initiatives. When you look at those curves, when you get to 2014, that's when I actually moved back to Nova Scotia and things weren't looking that great. That was the Irony report projections that were going downward. And so you can see where things have changed in the black line, going up to current. And this has caused quite a ripple in the province, obviously. Unexpected housing prices, supply, all of the things that we're experiencing. And then there's a projection there, and you know, somewhere in between that and some other line is probably the reality, with all of the unknowns associated with this. We've also done population work through Turner Drake on our library. And I think we've looked at a number of different methodologies as far as population projection goes. And I think we've established that Wolfville's population is not going down over the next number of years. And the other big projects that's happening at the provincial level is the Joint Regional Transportation Authority that's been established. And that's really under the mandate of increasing population within an hour of our major economic hub, which is HRM. And so that's that image at the top right. I just wanted to be really clear about this, that this is the aspiration of the current provincial government. This is again from one of their slide decks. And so it's an aspiration to get to a higher population number. I'm not sure the number is most important, but these different segments of this box is sort of the challenge that we have when we're doing this type of secondary planning and doing housing, is who exactly is going to move into these areas. And we've heard a lot of comments about that. There's a strong desire from some people for more people of their generation perhaps to move in there, whether it's young people, families. So who moves in isn't necessarily the metric that we're using from my seat. It's trying to provide options and choices that people can move into over time as they move through their life. This is obviously another piece that I've shown you before, but there's a lot of things that we're trying to work with right now in the planning profession that are unknown. And so we've tried to build in some flexibility as part of this process. Just a quick comment, I did liaise with the fire department. There was a comment about fighting fires, slightly larger buildings. We do have a 13-story building in the town that the fire department has confirmed with me they have the capability to deal with. And this is the last bit. There were some questions around where people will gather, and I just wanted to zoom out a little bit because a lot of the imagery that I've been showing for the East End really doesn't encompass the size of Reservoir Park. And so I think the East End of Wolfville this is the proposed zoning after the secondary planning process would be finished, but there's a really generous amount of open space in the East End. I think just looking at green areas generically, despite some of the work that we're doing in the parks plan and programming and things that I think can improve those spaces. But Reservoir Park as a space is, through our parks plan, we've learned is the most cherished space in town. It's a really large space. And I think a lot of the work that we've been doing has been trying to complement that through this and honor that through things like the view plane protection that we've had in this process. This just indicates some of the spaces where people can gather, whether it's active sort of parks outside or more passive areas, or the area in the village center. So I think it's important just to sort of underscore these pieces, because there has been a tremendous amount of thought and work and changes to respond to this type of concern as we've gone through this. The other thing that we've updated in a more recent version, and this was coming out of a council discussion, was just a requirement in the larger buildings for amenity space. Most developers of large buildings are doing this, but just to ensure that that's happening. Family units, I sort of have covered this. I think there's a lot of options in the zoning to provide a number of different formats. And I think part of that will be driven by the market and what is needed at the time when some of this gets built out. This is a slide that I've shown before, so I'm just reminding in terms of the rationale around 6 stories. So at a staff level, we've been looking at the building height issue since 2016. We had Fotan, a consulting firm out of Ottawa, make recommendations on that as part of our plan review. We had the other team we brought in with Fathom Studios and others coming in, and we've sort of had that recommendation there for quite some time in a selective way, that there was pockets for this to happen in the right way, in the right places, trying to minimize impacts. This was recommended by PAC, certainly acknowledging the feedback. And I know that at that meeting, there was perhaps a lot of mixed feelings, but the direction that I'm taking is from planning committee and council and moving projects forward in that fashion. I have been asked about bonusing and different situations that we've set up in our existing planning documents. I think the secondary planning is building in some of this bonusing through the public benefit, the road standards, the open space, the contribution of land, the building of, things like a viewing platform as part of moving this forward and being guided by the secondary plan. So I do think that's there. There's rising costs, there's land values, there's a housing crisis and a real supply issue that we're dealing with in the province and in the country. Most other municipalities are moving this way. And certainly on this site, there was some challenges with view plane protection. This is a great example of the trade-offs that we were dealing with. There was a lot of people adamant that low density goes against low density, for instance, in that area, which certainly isn't hitting a 10 units per acre minimum that we've established. And so we had to look at the Kennyland site a little bit different because of the view plane protection. A lot of work went into that. There's also a protected area, the compost site. There's a lot of complexities that we've worked through in that area. These buildings can achieve more open space. That was a really big goal of this process from the beginning. And this one area is certainly buffered from other residential. So this project was brought up at the meeting, so I just thought I would show it again here. This is a project in Windsor that's being proposed. I actually surprisingly didn't know about this until yesterday. The hockey stick is interesting. But this is, I think, a 16-story building. So Lunenburg has moved with all as of right process for certain select areas of town, similar to the approach that we're taking here, where 6 stories was deemed appropriate Obviously, there's many areas of Lunenburg we can all think of where it wouldn't be. And I think the same sentiment is here. And then we have a very large building in town. My office window looks directly at it, so I'm looking at it all the time. And this is what came out, was a zone really specifically for this and for this form. There's a number of additional built form requirements, step backs, different things around articulation. I think there's 3 pages of additional built form requirements when an architect or building designer gets involved. There's a number of metrics that we've covered. We've iterated on those as we've received feedback, and I think we've landed in a good place, certainly from my perspective. We went and also did this. I don't know if any of you, I was up there taking pictures in Reservoir Park for days, trying to get the right angle so we could work a realistic rendering into the package. That was a request coming out of PAC and council, that we brought something in, because, you know, this view is certainly cherished in the community. So that's all. I just had, I guess I put this slide in twice, but this is the motion, and I'll leave it there for questions.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, would you read the motion? We'll get it seconded and then we'll open up for council questions.
Okay. I would move the council adopts the East End Secondary Plan and gives second reading to the amendments to the town's planning documents outlined in the attached East End Secondary Plan and RFD 031-2023.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Right. Thank you, Councillor McKay. All right. We'll open this up to questions of council to staff. After we have questions, and I know these get interspersed, we will have comments. Once all members of council have asked all their questions and made their comments, I will pass the chair to the deputy mayor to make my comments. And then the deputy will take the vote, and then we will adjourn the meeting. So tried to do that at the last meeting, but then there were a lot of questions and it was Isabel and I were going back and forth. So I will ask, once everybody's had their say, then I will give up the chair to Isabel and hopefully it will go a little smoother. But so I open it up to any questions or comments from members of council, questions of staff or comments. Councillor Ing.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. I just had one question. I know that you gathered questions from the public hearings and whatnot in the last little while, and you had said that they weren't a major concern. And so, like, example, flow rate and underground, power, etc. Are there any that are a little bit more concerning, or is there anything that Alex is working on that's maybe that we should know about? Because I'm just thinking some of the public will want answers to that. As far as the water flow goes. So how would you address those instead of lumping them all together?
You're on.
I'm on. Hi. So one of the concerns that came out of the public hearing that I heard about today, new information to Engineering and Public Works, was concerns about water pressure in the Whispering Creek subdivision. I wasn't aware of that prior to the public hearing, but I did go back to some of our hydrant flow testing results from the last round of testing we did in late 2021, and I didn't see anything in that report that would indicate lack of pressure or flow capacity at any of the hydrants tested in that area. However, I am soliciting quotes from vendors for fire hydrant pressure data loggers. Those are basically a sensor that goes on your fire hydrant, so you can log pressures in the system and monitor over a period of time and review later on. So that's something we'll definitely be doing as a result of that that comment. Other issues or concerns?
Follow up, because the gentleman who spoke said there was two different ways to measure water flow. One, I'm not a water flow measurer, so I don't know. But something was like, I had the impression in my head something was flowing and something was staying still. So is that, I don't know. That's the way he described it, so that's how I have it in my head, but are there two different ways to measure water flow?
I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but what it may be is when they do hydrant flow testing, two hydrants are used in a flow test. One is opened and two readings are taken, a static pressure, which is the pressure without anything flowing, and residual pressure once a hydrant begins flowing. And that residual pressure, once a hydrant is flowing, can give you a lot of information. We're actually currently, and I know I've said this many times, we're still in the process of building our hydraulic model of our water system. It's a complicated system to model, and these hydrant flow tests, measuring those static and residual pressures flowing different hydrants through the system, are what calibrates the model. So that's something the field work was completed, I believe in May this year, and the consultants are working through calibrating the model now, and they're going to have a much clearer picture of what exactly is happening in our system, what would happen under different scenarios. Should you have a fire where multiple hydrants are opened, what sort of capacities and shortfalls the system has in those types of situations. So that is ongoing, but we're expecting the results of that soon.
If I could just to build on that, because I do remember that gentleman's comment, and I know we have a similar issue with just people's hoses to wash their car on the east end of town, Sylvan Drive and so on. So my question is there a difference between the pressure that might come out of a hydrant on Carriageway and what might come out of somebody's hose on Carriageway? Or house, at their house, a shower?
Is there a difference? I'm not really sure how to.
Well, I mean, you might have a low flow shower, but is there a difference in the amount of water that could create pressure?
In an emergency situation, if multiple fire hydrants are opened or even one fire hydrant is flowing at full capacity, it may affect somebody's water pressure in their shower. Whether or not that's important to consider is another.
I guess
question.
the question, as I understood it, was not about fire hydrants. It was about their shower and the hose to wash the car. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes. So that was their question.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I apologize.
I think it's a specific issue that we can look into. I am not. Yeah.
I do remember that
Sounds
in
very
the
property
Sylvan Drive
specific.
area, because our water is gravity flow. Those of us like me who live down on the flat probably have greater pressure than Jody, you live up on the hill. So maybe we can look into that.
Yeah, I
I
would
think
be.
it's a townwide issue.
I would be interested in speaking with the person who brought the issue forward to try and get some more information.
I'm sure we can arrange that. Councillor Palmer.
I suspect that the problem, it may be, I don't know, but I suspect the problem is somewhere between our line and the houses up there. Like if you had a restriction in that flow going into your house, you're going to have a restricted pressure. So I suspect that that's really the issue, but I don't know how you're going to prove that, but I would start by going to that guy's house and put your pressure meter on that and take his pressure, and then go to the neighbors and take their pressure.
Mhm.
I think that's what you're gonna have to end up doing, is doing a little bit of homework on those properties, because we get one person, I would question it. You get 4 or 5 or 6 people question it. I think it's something we really need to look at. And I suspect that it's a mechanical problem. as opposed to a water pressure problem, if that makes any sense to anybody. But that's not the question I wanted to ask. The question I wanted to ask was, when we go to build these buildings later on, any of these buildings, who's gonna have the final say in what these buildings look like?
There's a couple different approval mechanisms built in. So out by Main Street, the village center is an architectural control area. And so that will go through a more, let's call it a robust process with our design review committee and development agreements. And we sort of shifted that based on feedback. So that would be approved by council. The buildings everywhere else, we've set this up to proceed by site plan approval. So we have that area, and the rest of it is based out of these. I've summarized them here, but we have these zone standards, which form the baseline. And we have, like I said, the additional built form requirements. And the site plan approval is approved at staff level, and there's an appeal mechanism to council if it's not sort of consistent as we experienced not so long ago. So that was the basis. And if I could just say one other thing about that, I do think, unless there's a unique condition like this architectural control area or a bit more of an ambitious plan like the village center, I do think after going through 2 years of process, which would be similar to a development agreement, this is where we probably should be landing to then require development agreements for these. Even in the best case scenario, you're 6 months, 9 months to get through a development agreement process.
Right, okay, good, okay. That's what I was hoping you're gonna say. But that's what my understanding was. And the other quick question I have, and we talked about it before, but I haven't seen any drawings that indicate that. But there's going to be on-street parking on most of these new streets, am I correct?
Yeah, we're still working with we don't have any drawings for the Maple Ridge lands, obviously, but there's on-street parking that we've been talking about on the Kenny lands. Yeah.
Councillor Elliott?
Yes. I appreciate how much you've delved into this, Devin and Alex. It's intricate. I think what's concerning me now is the level of precedent for the 6-story building. I'm worried that we're going to be looking at the same thing in the Stonegate subdivision in the apartment buildings that have yet to be planned out. And can you assure me that this is a one-off, or will it come up again?
Could never assure you of that. So people can ask for things, and right now we're looking at one small area. Will someone come in and ask for these development rights somewhere else? Perhaps. I don't know. Is there other spots in town where this could be a fit? Sure. We haven't really looked in detail at any other sites. We've been really into this one. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. Because we live on a hill, there has been much talk about the runoff when people build, and for quite a bit on the west end. And their construction on this, which is still happening. What happens if there is runoff or the land starts to dispersing? That is a fairly steep hill, and you're looking at, basically a cliff, and then everything running off since there. What is our authority to stop things if things start to run away from us?
So all new developments in town are required to manage and mitigate any anticipated stormwater impacts. And this is done typically through a very comprehensive stormwater analysis and management plan. It's a required part of the engineering submissions when the development is applied for, when it's planned, and before engineering and public works approves it. So this is all figured out ahead of time, and then through construction, it's our role to ensure the developers are building what they've committed to build and what what the engineering process has dictated.
So in other words, you will make sure that it's the way it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. What did you say, Devin? Sorry, about a DA about the 6 stories. So I'm curious about the mix and the amenity space in it. And is that a given that we can, so it's a comments about having various 1, 2s, and 3 apartment build, various choice in this development. So are we, you said something about a DA just right before that. So could we, because we said we would DA this part of the commercial space on the Maple Ridge lands.
Yeah.
So would we DA the 6-story buildings, or are we saying this is it? Because for me, it's mixed and amenity space in that building.
So
That's
the amenity spaces are required.
required.
Yeah. If there is a strong desire from council to introduce a mix of 1, 2, 3 bedroom or some other mix, I would think that that's a fairly non-substantive piece that we could add in.
Substantial, did you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's really minor in the grand scheme of what I'm dealing with here. So I thought that suggestion may come forward. And so if that is the desire, my opinion would be that's a incredibly minor thing to add in here. Was there another question there? No, that was it.
Just that it wouldn't need to be a DA to do that. It would just be, that would be a non-substantive change.
Yeah.
Do that at this point in time.
Yeah, we haven't put it in there, and I'll just tell you why, is because I'm not sure what percentage we should require. And I think the market changes that we've seen are one side of it, but I think the demand is vast. I know the province is going through needs assessments for the entire province, and I think everyone's going to be quite surprised with the number of units that are required over the next number of years. So I was recommending not putting something like that prescriptive in, but if that's the will of council, I would say that we don't need to go back through a public hearing to make a minor change like that.
Thank you.
But I would like to put, to keep that, ask other questions, but before we go to the end of the night, I believe that that would be a good thing to bring back and get council's view on it. I'm going to Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. I just have I guess a follow-up, a need for clarification regarding the question that Councillor Elliott got or asked regarding the precedent setting, because this is the first sort of high density piece of land that we are zoning. And Devin, you said that the request could come up from other areas for a similar zoning, the similar height. What would actually be the process for that? What would happen if somebody did request that? What position would then council be in terms of either saying yes or no, or could it be by right approved? I mean, what would we be dealing with?
So fundamentally, it's a change to the zoning map and the land use bylaw. With something like that, we'd actually probably have to amend our planning strategy as well. It would depend on the piece of land. It would be an application made, or unless the town initiated it. And it would go through a similar process that you've seen for rezonings or development agreements. It resolves at council, there's public hearings, there's information meetings, there's consultation. Yeah, so it's a council process, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean by that? We start with a information meeting and we move through to planning committee, on to committee of the whole, public hearing, and a decision is made.
Okay, that is very helpful, because I was, I guess, just wanting to confirm that because this now exists, then if a property, say, is outside of the core, which remains protected at 3 stories, that this would not be, that someone would not be able to just automatically increase an existing plan or a new plan to the 6-story because we now have this.
No, the development rights in the town are very property specific, and whether it's development agreements that exist or existing zoning, you can't just sort of switch out of that at your whim. It's certainly a process that gets approved by council.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Elliott?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on Alex's comment about stormwater runoff. Has something changed since Sterling Avenue went in, Alex? Because there was a huge amount of property owner concern about runoff, and the runoff not only going down Sterling, but across Main Street to the pond by the 2 condo buildings and filling that up. So is it different now?
It's different in the sense that I'm at the helm here now. And I'm only saying, I'm only saying that I can't comment on what the rules or what the process was prior to my arrival here. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
So previous and some of the issues that you're referring to. So when we did our plan review, we hired Hatch Engineering, who did develop a comprehensive set of stormwater management guidelines. It was probably long overdue. So that has changed along with Mr. D'Souza being in the seat.
I just wanted to follow up because there's a little video floating around on social media right now of the rain. I think it was a week ago tonight, coming down Orchard Avenue. Looks like a river,
Yeah.
as Councilor
Yeah.
Ingham would know. So it's a concern on the hill.
Counselor Ingham?
Yeah, so I just want to follow up to Counselor Elliott's question. The 6 stories, I mean, I think that's why we're probably talking a lot here tonight. I know I did ask when I first went on planning, I said, so if we zone it in this area, this small area, and I can't even remember the amount of acres it is. Comprehensive Development District is always also at Sterling, it's also in Woodman's, and it's also at the Maple Ridge, right? So in my mind, I was like, if we zone it here, then we're opening the door as council for other people to ask questions, and you confirmed that could be the case, right? That somebody else you couldn't assure us that somebody else isn't going to come along and say, hey, we did 6 stories here, we want to have 6 stories there. So that would come back as a council decision too. Okay, just want to make sure I'm correct on that. Also, how can we, I guess other questions that I've had about the 6 stories is that I understand the sort of the grading on that. And I could get this wrong, so you can correct me. We sort of start off at 2% and we go all the way up to 20% as we go up the hill on the slope or whatever. Again, I'm not a planner or an engineer, so I could get these things wrong, but to my understanding. So I understand how, you know, a 6-story building can look like sort of a 4-story building. But also can understand how a 3-story building can look like a 5-story building when we have the peaks on it. So how can we be assured if we do approve the 6-story that we're not going to have like peaks that are going to make it look like an 8-story? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's an overall height as well, limitation. And I think some of this narrative is sort of driven by the roof trusses that are on Woodman's Grove. They have added quite a bit of height. If you had a flat roof there, I think it would be a different scenario. So we're not telling everyone they have to do flat roofs. I think that's somewhat encouraged where you can have things like amenity space there, especially in that location. The other thing to keep in mind is, yeah, all of the sites will have slightly different slopes, and there can be advantages or drawbacks depending on the way the slope goes, because we have a definition of building height that measures the average grade around the building, and that every property in town would either benefit or not from that. And so those are just really site-specific considerations. It's hard to make sort of generalizations about it, but at the end of the day, it's a 6-story height limitation. if there's like a specific, you know, I don't think people are putting 12 roof pitches on 6-story buildings. If that, like they're not building castles. I don't think so. I would be surprised if someone did. And I think that a lot of the trend here is for really low slung roofs and flat roofs with usable space or amenity rooms or different things. Yeah, I think that's where things are going.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. I want to follow up on the 6-story and opening it up. So I understand that what our MPS says and that you would have to come through the same process if you wanted to change in our CDD, which is in a couple of places, as Councillor Ingham said. What would be the reason that council could say no to that change?
It would really depend. So the areas that are currently zoned CDD are Woodman's Grove, which is built out, right? So there is no other development opportunity in Woodman's Grove. So that's one piece. And if some of you will remember, we tried to zone that as part of our plan review, just to get rid of the CDD. That didn't, so we set that aside. That really should come back at some point. It's easier for us to sort of play through the zoning than the development agreements. There's land at Acadia, could be relevant. They have a lot of land. I think they're making strides to look at their housing situation, and I think there could be relevance there. And then there's the West End, and there's not a lot of other opportunities for this. There really isn't, and I think the only area left in the West End is adjacent to the highway. Saying no, it would really depend on what's being proposed and why, and what the circumstances at the time. I think I definitely don't have an answer for you how one could say no.
That worries me. The West End opening that up. It's a comment, so I'll wait.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify when during the development, this 2-year process, one of the reasons at least that was my understanding at PAC, that PAC, there was a lot of concern about the 6-story or how high it would be. But one of the trade-offs was that by agreeing to it being 6-story, we were actually gaining a lot of green space. This was part of the trade-off, that we were going to get, I believe it's 5 new trails, including the water course, and that this was, am I wrong in thinking that, Devin, that, there were many trade-offs, but because for me, one of the biggest, I guess, reasons, because I've always been concerned about the height or in town regardless, was that by agreeing to these extra 2 stories, even though we were going to have a setback, that we were actually gaining a lot of green space, trails and watercourses, as I said, for the town. Would there have to be some kind of trade-off if somebody now approached us wanting that CDD area to be 6 stories? Would that apply as well? Or am I wrong? And then that was part of the trade-off.
Do you mean if another owner came to us and asked us for those development rights, would there be similar trade-offs? Is that what you're asking?
Would we be in the same position? And I guess this follows to Councillor McKay, I guess I am concerned that we, would be in a position where we may have to agree to it legally because of this precedent, because of what we're doing here.
So I wrote the municipal planning strategy, and when I did it at the time, I did write a policy in there. I don't know what number it is, but it's something along the lines of decisions on one site do not, and it's pretty common, do not set precedents on others, because unless they're right next to each other in the exact same zone, we're talking, the reality, I think, of applying this elsewhere is, in my opinion right now, probably at Acadia somewhere, or up in the West End. The West End has an existing development agreement with development rights. There'd be substantial process to move that either through a development agreement amendment, which has, I don't know how many pages that development agreement is, but it was a very complicated exercise we went through. It took 15 years to get to over the line. Yeah, I don't want to make any assumptions because I don't even know if that is the intent or where or someone else may emerge and ask for these things. But I think it would have to be carefully considered. It may be 10 years from now. I think by creating a zone in your zoning bylaw, and it's the same as the 1 to 4 unit zone that we've created. There may be people that are looking at that or the medium density zone that also provides different types of development rights in the town. And so I think the reality is we have new tools in our toolbox and some people may ask to use them. And I'm not sure you're obligated to say yes to any of them. We've gone through a 2-year secondary planning process, very specific, looking in detail at these pieces of land. And so I just sort of throwing them to other pieces, I'm not sure would be giving this process any real credence to what we've done. So someone probably will ask at some point, I have no doubt, but when that is and what the context is, I think it's hard to speculate.
Councillor Butler's next. Because Acadia has been mentioned, it's my understanding we don't really have a lot of control on what Acadia wishes to build. Is that correct?
But they're still, they have more height than everywhere else in town, but they certainly come through the land use bylaw and have
Okay.
asked, we've gone through development agreements. New science building was one that we handled recently. Yeah.
Councillor Butler?
My question's climate related, climate change related, environment related. So there is stuff in the document that you provided about how there is climate and environment put into this climate action as part of the plan. I get a lot of residents that say, you know, well, you have a climate action plan and you're doing this, but yet you're bringing in all of these machines and you're doing all of this to build this. What is going to be special about these buildings that will offset, that will actually stick to our climate plan? If you're putting out all of these emissions to build it, will these new buildings, townhouses, all have heat pumps and solar panels? And will there be like a solar garden? Will there be, how are we making up for all that we're putting into the environment with helping the environment, if that makes sense?
I think the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that we live in an agricultural region. And so from a growth and development perspective in our region, I think it's really important to be doing this type of density in places that have services. So we don't impact the wider rural areas and allow more development that some people call sprawl or is really far away from everything so that everyone has to use their vehicle to get everywhere. I think at the core of this is really well located housing is the most important thing I think we can contribute to here. I know the developers that are here, one of them is part owner in a renewable energy company. The modern building code, we are bringing a report on the building code and some of the push that came out of the climate plan around energy efficiency requirements, but the code's moving in that direction. Most of the multi-unit that people are building is sort of really utilitarian in that they really want to build high efficiency because they're trying to get to really good ROI at the end of the day as well. And it saves them money over the long term. So I think our struggle in my department from the building side is more with sort of one-off homes than multi-unit from an energy efficiency perspective. I know there's a lot that could be said about more locating this development and how some of this can contribute to lower emissions in the town by contributing to us having the ability to put things in like AT that's used, microtransit that's actually used, and we have a critical mass to use it. The commercial development opportunities that we're putting in here so people can walk to services, the level of parks and open space. So I think there's a lot to be said about that, but I say this to a lot of people. I think the the big focus in the valley really needs to be in the towns, in the places with services, so that we're not degrading the rural character and a lot of the things that people come to Nova Scotia to see that isn't in the built up areas.
I don't see other lights, so we could go to comment, but I wonder if we can first, as I understand it, would be a non-substantive change. If we, Councillor McKay, maybe you could just summarize your comment again, and we could have a quick discussion to see if we want to provide direction to staff. And I'm going to look at staff. This is okay to do in this process where we are in this discussion.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very common, so
Okay.
I don't think this is a big deal.
So-
We did consider this.
Sure. So maybe Councillor McKay, if you would kind of explain what your idea was, and we could talk about that.
So happy to hear the amenity space is required, because that was a big thing for me for sure. So the 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So I am gonna say I'm not an expert on what housing trends are and what would be the appropriate mix, but I would look to staff then to perhaps. So we have 3, potentially if this goes through 3 6-story buildings with how many units in each one? If it built out as laid out for us today.
I don't have the number. Can I just make a suggestion if you're willing? I would suggest that it just something that suggests that a mix of unit types be introduced into the high density zone, and we can certainly do that.
Does that do it for members? of
It's a
council?
1, 2, 3 bedroom, just to say it for the record. Yeah, and I mean, the intent of that, I don't know if we unpacked it completely, is really to provide some family units in these larger buildings.
Well, it's based on Travis's comment on the other item. It does seem to be that there are families moving into our community, and certainly everything we're reading suggests that. I'd also just comment on Councillor McKay's comment about as we put more people together, that amenity space so that you have a community, and because living in a high rise, as I've said many times, can be very isolating if you're a young parent or a single business person, or, you know, aging in place. We certainly know that those units at Woodman's Road who have an active community group in their community room are very happy there. So that's all we need to do in terms of direction. Perfect, good. There's no other questions, and do feel free to add questions if, oh, sorry. Our question, that's a good question. Our questions concluded because before we move into comments. I think so. You could have done that. All right, I will open this up for any comments that members of council want to say, and when you have exhausted yourselves, I will pass this over to the deputy mayor, who will also have made her comments. So comments anyone would like to make? Councillor Butler.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to thank Devin for making the comments about how the population change is not decreasing, but it is increasing. That's all I've read. So when the comment was brought out to us, I was waiting to find some sort of evidence to figure that out, but I'm really glad that that point was addressed, because it's not going anywhere but up. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Councillor Ingham.
Yes, I just want people to know that, I mean, we've discussed, we've asked questions, we've talked. It's not something that you just automatically say that's a really easy decision, because you're taking all different populations into consideration. And I mean, I just want people to be mindful that this is not happening overnight. This is a plan like 20 years. And so part of council's job is to sort of see where do we think maybe trends are going to be in 20 years. You know, we don't want to have a shortfall in anything. We want to make sure that we're looking into the future. So those are things that I'm taking into consideration. I'm talking to, you know, try to talk to every single generation and their needs. I'm thinking of people that are retiring. they want it, they want to live in an apartment building. I'm thinking of, you know, new couples or single or families. They want to have a 3-bedroom. We might need to have that. So there's so many things that we took and, you know, we need to take into consideration. And one of them is trends. And I think that we're all aware that things have drastically changed in the housing market since 2020 when the MPS came out. And we had the 3-story and the 4-story. So I just want to be mindful of that. We're looking to the future and the growth, and this is not happening overnight. But I do have one question if I'm able to ask one, but no, too late.
No, I said.
Okay.
go ahead.
Because it just sort of came up. So because the 6 stories, I mean, that seems to be the most contentious issue here and the one that we've heard the most of. When do we expect those buildings to, in the process, to sort of come to start or into fruition in the plan? Do we know that?
He's looking at you.
Yeah, in my discussions with the developers, they're going to look to develop some of the ground cover, and at this point, unsure whether they would be sort of brokering those multi-unit sites or looking to go in on those. So it's, I think it's to be determined, but if you know these gentlemen, it'll be as soon as possible.
Or go ahead. If you could come up to the mic.
Which people tell me to quiet down.
Yeah, so our people who are listening can't hear you. If,
To start a 6-story building immediately, there's no people to work on it. It's going to be a few years. It just has to be a few years before you can get someone from the city to come out that can do the concrete that we want to do. Or no, it's not going to be the first thing we do. That's for sure. But it'll take a few years for us to start them. Once we start them, we would like to roll them out one at a time till you get your crews here. So it's not something you're going to see within the next 2 or 3 months, that's for sure. It's going to be a few years before we get our head around it.
okay, thank you. Other Councilor McKay.
Yeah, I follow up to Councilor. Nancy. The 6-story certainly is the most, you know, the hottest topic, I guess, in town at the moment, aside from the pooch party perhaps. But it, you know, and we don't take it lightly. I can remember when the one across the street was coming, it was the most contentious issue. I think we did a good job of working our way through that. I'm not a big fan of apartment buildings to begin with, but I know that they're needed. I didn't like Woodman's either. So, but we're come to a point where we're at a housing crisis. You know, sitting here as a homeowner, I understand that I came from a place of privilege. I have a home, I live in it, and I'm happy to have my space, but not everybody is in that situation. So the trade-offs, as Deputy Mayor has said, are the green space, the climate, and having all of those amenities in that space and the platform and protecting that view plane. Those are the trade-offs to get that 6 stories in there, to keep it at the right density and to have people a place to live. So I don't know that I would make the same decision in another place in town. However, I will vote in favor for this one, or just for the space that it is. I do believe it keeps to our strategic plan for climate, social equity, and economic prosperity. And those are the Bible that we live by. So that I will vote in favor for those reasons.
Other comments, members of council? Councillor Elliott?
I have been feeling torn a bit by this whole process. But I feel like our staff have answered all of our questions, have listened to the public over and over again. And I have a mind to vote for it now.
Sorry, I did not want to put you on the spot, but you looked like you might be wanting to. Same thing, Councillor Palmer, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but you're good. Deputy Mayor.
I would just
Oh,
like
you-
to say,
you would like
I
something.
would agree with, I'm gonna go with Councillor Elliott and what she said. It's been, it's very contentious, and I've talked to lots of people who are for and against it, but I will vote for it.
Deputy Mayor, would you like to make any comments?
No, I think that much of what I'm thinking and feeling has already been expressed very well by other members of council, and I too struggled many points with the height issue, but I think on balance, I will be voting in favor of this motion.
Anybody else on council before I do pass the chair over to the deputy mayor? Like to comment? So I have to change my glasses. Deputy Mayor? This is
Okay.
yours now.
If somebody,
You now have the chair,
okay,
and I'm
thank
going
you.
to speak.
I just
Okay.
ask if somebody afterwards wants to speak at any, I need to see hands because I can't see
No,
lights.
nobody, yes, no
Nobody-
one else has, I've asked if anyone else wants to speak. I will be the last speaker, then you will call the vote.
Okay,
And then regardless of the vote, you will adjourn the meeting, okay?
yep.
Okay. I will also vote, and while I do agree with what everybody has said, I never don't take a chance to speak, so I'm going to. I feel that for many reasons, this is very positive for our community. I was reading an article this morning, like Councillor McKay, I am, well, I'm actually older than Councillor McKay, but I'm one of those lucky people in the baby boom generation who apparently in 1979, 70% of Canadians were homeowners. I didn't realize that was a post-war phenomenon, that it didn't actually happen before the Second World War. Homeownership is a dream for many young people today, and in fact, it's for reasons financial, but also for other reasons. People are choosing to rent. Quite many people in Woodman's Road were homeowners and are very happy to be in an apartment, and so our world is changing. And I think I'm very happy we had the discussion about a mix of apartment sizes, because I think there are singles, there are young families, there are empty nesters, there are people who have multiple children who would like a 3-bedroom apartment. So people who may have a parent living with them, an older parent. So I am excited to see a community that is a real mix of different ages and interests in our community. From an environmental perspective, I believe we need to do, this is an opportunity for us to do our part to protect our parkland and to protect our farmland, which is absolutely imperative in our time. I do believe that the building code, having just built a house 3 years ago, I can attest to the fact that the building code has made my heating much less expensive than my 125-year-old house was, and perhaps still is, in spite of its renovations. I think this allows us to be sustainable. I think I'm also excited about it because we know in council just how many demands we have in this small town for things that we cannot afford unless our town grows bigger. We have an educated population, a population that has visited many other parts of the country. They want the microtransit, they want the pickleball courts, they want the splash pads and all of the things that larger communities have. And this is an opportunity for us to be part of those opportunities as well. We've talked about our population. I think the last census, we were just 5,050 people. That doesn't include the 3,500 students, of which about 2,000 live in our town. And I know Acadia has plans for another 500 students, putting huge pressure on existing houses in the town. And so if we can meet some of the demand for people who are, I listened to a gentleman talk to our staff today who was fortunate to buy a house in town. He is a new prof at Acadia. There are not many of those left to be had. And so we're a growing town. We have a town with demands. We are a town that cares about the environment and wants to create and has the opportunity to create such a vibrant community. So I will be supporting this. I want to thank staff. This has been a long and I know somewhat arduous and time-consuming process for them. I really appreciate the work that Devon and Lindsay and Alex and Kelton and Mike and Barb. I know all of you have been part of this effort. So on behalf of council, thank you so much for that. And I pass my comments. Those are my comments. I pass it over to the deputy mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Donovan. So at this point, I will call for the vote and ask that all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Vote passes. Thank you. And now I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
Moved.
Sorry.
She can't hear you.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parmenter and Councillor McKay, I believe. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please signify by saying yes. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.